Alright, I believe I have everything closed that is going to get me in trouble. I think the dog might have to deal with with no copyright sounds. Oh, played 3 notes. There goes the copyright strike. So there. Okay. No copyright music is playing. And we should be good. Chat, let me know how sound and everything's doing. Also, the missus is in the office, and she's probably going to be yelling at me when I do dumb stuff while I stream, so that should be fun. Hopefully, she boosts the viewer count and mutes me, though. So yeah. And moderates my chat. Aww. Our dog's digging her nest. So much awesome puppy stuff has happened this weekend. So we got our first foster dog. Something we've wanted to do recently. Which learning about that's honestly been super interesting because a lot of times it seems like breeders will surrender dogs that have like minor defects. With physical products, the analogy would be like bee stock. Like perfectly, or they'll have like minor health defects or something like that, or like there's forgot his name. There's this really cute little Shiba Inu puppy. What? Cammy? Sammy. Yeah, there's this little cute boy named Sammy. He just didn't have the little cinnamon bun tail you expect with sheeps, but really cute personality. He's just like the cutest little thing ever. It's like, how could you not sell this dog? Like, to me, like, dog breeding is such a weird thing. But, yeah. So what the heck have I been doing? A bunch of stuff not related to Shiftmon, and bug fixes for Shiftmon is the short answer to that. It's been nice to play with some services, like switching a VPN over to Headscale instead of Firezone. That was really cool. Headscale can do more overlay networking things, whereas as of now, this is going to date poorly. Firezone isn't an overlay network, it's an abstraction on top of WireGuard. So it basically makes WireGuard as easy, actually slightly easier than OpenVPN with pfSense or OpenSense. That's kind of the comparison. And then Tailscale you can actually get, or Headscale you can do fancier things, like switch from a split tunnel to a full tunnel, and you can have the VPN on while on your Wi-Fi, and things like casting via YouTube still works, which is how I consume a lot of content. So that's definitely been a plus. There is some jank associated with it though, because you're using the Tailscale app, and in like Android you have to tap the settings icon 3 times to get the server name to pop up. It's super weird. Hey babe, audio and everything showing up? Yeah. Okay. I think YouTube Studio's just being goofy and making me sign into Google. And then one more thing I want to go over, and something I need to record so I can put it on YouTube, is Shelby and I actually did a talk about practicing safe sec is the name of the talk, and it's about using single sign-on. And she goes over more of the like how to sell your business on it, because it's really awesome. And then I go over more of like, hey, here's how it's implemented in like the high level, because it's different for freaking every app. It's really high level about like, hey, you read the vendor docs, read your docs, please don't use LDAP unless you absolutely have to because the MFA options suck. And then just mess around until you get things right and use test accounts until you're ready to roll out to prod to make sure to test. And we might add... Oh, yeah, sorry. I have a fidget cube. I have to fidget with something if I'm just talking. So maybe I should stop talking and start doing. I think stream's warmed up enough that I can... I got a quiet fidget toy now. Start talking and let's do it. So let's actually go through to kind of go through how awesome OpenID is. So if we wanted to sign into Proxmox normally using PAM, we do that. Which we have to memorize a password. There's no prompt for MFA or anything like that. So there's a bunch of stuff not okay there, especially in an enterprise. There's no MFA. I'm signing in as root. Signing in as root's not a great idea. The reason for that is you have too much privilege for what you want to do, and root isn't a person, so it's hard to trace back who did what when. So especially if you're in a multi-user team, you need to set up users, and setting up users can be a giant pain in the butt. So how do we deal with this? We do MFA. And the way an MFA from the user perspective goes is this, most applications, there's just like a sign in with Gitty button, and then they click login via OIDC redirect. And boom, I'm there. There are some functions that might not be available. Like in Grafana, there's certain admin things that are restricted, and in Proxmox, because you're not logging onto the server, if I wanted to hop on the shell or do hypervisor updates, I wouldn't be allowed to do that. But especially for like when I was running Proxmox in a business, my non-technical manager wasn't shelling in and installing updates, he was just rebooting VMs, so it'd be fine for him. And then how does the sign-in work if we're not already authenticated to Gitty? We'd sign out. Let me sign out of Gitty in another window, because I'm not sure if there's an OPSEC issue there. So we'd click sign in to Gitty. This is actually synced with our LDAP backend. And then I get my MFA prompt for my security key, and I'm back in. So now I have MFA, and I even have an audit trail that goes back to a centralized place. So even though I do have syslog set up for Proxmox, but the nice thing is that the log's going to be consistent. So if I go to Grafana and go to explore, app name, Gitty, then search out for Matthias. We'll see that Matthias did this thing. I logged out and then signed in right here, so I can see all my activity interacting with Gitty. So yeah, some of you might notice that this Proxmox cluster, wasn't here last stream, and that's because my stepson actually wanted to have a video game server. So he likes doing like hardware things, so like actually building PCs. So I tore apart an Optiplex, handed him a bunch of spare parts. Some of them were like actually not compatible with the machine, and told him build the beefiest server you can, and that was really fun. So he built this. One reason I did it was so he could have something to build. Another reason I wanted to check out the new Proxmox release and see what it was like to use a hypervisor with OIDC and stuff like that. And there's some actually like nice stuff in Proxmox 8, OIDC being one of them. Being able to do the UR or configure, where is it, repositories from the GUI now. So like the nagware, you always had to SSH in and mess with sources.list. That was super annoying. So Proxmox is definitely still getting better. It's still nice to be able to run like Docker or Podman on bare metal, so I'm going to stick with my existing setup unless I need to cluster things. Like if I wanted to switch from running Podman on bare metal to Kubernetes, I wouldn't do it on bare metal, and then if all my containers fit well into Kubernetes, I'd spin up a Proxmox cluster. So yeah. Let's get into Ansible and NixOS. So that was a topic I was supposed to talk about. So why the heck shift systems? There's nothing bad in here. Shift Nix, that's what I called it. So what the heck? Why would you use Ansible and NixOS? Don't they kind of solve similar problems? Well, kind of. NixOS is configuration management, or is an operating system pretty much managed through a built-in configuration management tool where you have like a single file that, or a single file or a folder of files that configure the entire operating system. So package installs, all that good stuff. So let's actually poke in there. So it configures your bootloader, disk encryption, all that good stuff. And it's really cool because it's like one command deploys your whole OS. The downside, or the reason why you would need Ansible with that configuration management solution is fleet management. So what happens when I have like 50 servers? I don't want to have to SSH into each one and SSH into each server just to deploy updates or to run a single command. Having a tool be able to loop through a bunch of hosts, deploy an updated config, and then apply it is super handy. Kind of reminds me of network switches or like OpenSense where everything is in the XML file. Nix is nicer than XML to edit, but it's a similar concept. You just plop the file down, say, hey, apply the config, and you're good. Another reason why you would use Ansible with the Nix is Nix gets like 90% of stuff there, but there's still some things like Machina where the NixOS package doesn't support configuration. So I have to add some dot files, or there's some things like custom ASCII art that don't apply to that. So final reason is, what if you have a mixed environment? So what if I have a Nix VM and then a bunch of other VMs? I want to be able to not have to use a separate NixOS tool. And it's nice to be able to not have tool sprawl where you have a separate Nix tool and a separate Ansible tool. It can also help smoothly transition over. So if I just wanted to have one simple workload that fit really well in Nix, I could deploy it alongside all my other stuff where I'm just like yeeting Lua files into the home folder, which we'll get to next. So how am I deploying all this? Remembering Ansible command line flags kind of sucks, so I set up CI to do that for me. We go to the shift Nix repo, we run a pipeline, then do deploy true after we fire up the run the VM, fire up disk encryption. Then it should boot up. I think there's a way to add AES and I to this step so it goes faster, but Nix is super interesting, and I have a friend that's a huge NixOS fan. So I keep on like playing around with it, and I keep on trying to get parts of my setup to work with it, and I'm like, huh. It's like, I'm like, oh man, I should really play with NixOS. I play with NixOS, and I'm just like, this isn't that much better than Fedora, and it's kind of actually a pain in the butt to set up. So I'm not going to do it. And then I wait a while, and then I'm like, NixOS is kind of poggy. And then I play with it again. It's kind of a vicious cycle. I actually want to cancel this step because I need to open a terminal and add a new git status, git add star, git commit, and added more stuff, git push. Boom. Okay. So we'll wait for this to go through. Another fun reason to use CI is it can judge you for doing bad things. So I can run tools like Kix, which is going to tell me if I'm throwing secrets in there, like hard coding API keys and dumb stuff like that. And then Ansible Lint is going to make sure I'm following Ansible best practices. And it's one of those things where it's like, no news is good news. And then this, all it does is seriously print one echo, my job here is done. The reason for it that is if you have a job without any default configuration steps, Woodpecker just freaks out. So just having a welcome step. So deploy, true. I'm thinking this should just be anytime you run it manually, because like there's not a time where I'm not running it manually that I wanted to apply. So now this is applying to my Nix host. There's a bug, so we should probably fix that. nvim repos, repos shift Nix, and then yeah. There. Let me know in chat if you need help seeing. So now, clear, we are going to run nvim in this folder, and then run, what is it, space H? H pulls up terminal, then, I even forgot the freaking, man, I forgot the nvchad command for the helper. nvchad docs. I've been playing around with nvchad too. I forgot the command to pull up the tree, because there is a command to like, there's a command to pull up the leader. Toggle comment, new buffer. Funnel, new line number, new vertical term. Ah, crap. Now, I'm just going to... Ball. nvim, we want to do files. Nix apply files, home manager.nix. Then do, Oh, yeah, this font config thing. This was working, and I was just being dumb. Undo. This was working, and I was just being stupid. Add star, git commit, move bad feature, and I need to move my head. Git push origin. Alright, I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel that CI job that spawned. The nice thing is about Nix 2 is that it has atomic config switching, so applying this bad config doesn't break anything because it had bad syntax. And you can revert back to snapshots too. So if you deploy a functioning config that works, it doesn't leave your system in a mangled state. And if you do manage to deploy a valid but wrong config, so like the syntax works but it doesn't do what you want it to, you can revert back by just rebooting the machine or going back to another snapshot. I haven't gotten that far yet, but you can do it. Which is nice because with Ansible, like, you have to kind of fail forward at it. You can't be like, JK, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah. Remove bad features. That one ran. Deploy true. Deploy true. Add variable. Boom. So now this should work. And now this should deploy. Then we're gonna make a release of shift, my shift systems base Ansible roles, which I don't think I've talked about on stream. NVTerm toward cheat sheet. That's what it is. I forget what the cheat sheet command is. Okay, so now we go here. We can also see the trail of things that have played, and it dealt with all the Ansible things we don't have. So now we can search. And it's mostly the same as my other config. We just don't have like syntax highlighting. So now, how do we become an NV chat everywhere? NV cheat sheet. How do I do this? Generated, blah, blah, blah. Now, let's open up another term. We'll do this one in VS Code. So we're gonna add in a Vim alias here, and all of this for nvchat.lua. Now we're going to do a Galaxy release as well. So to do that, we need to bump the Galaxy version to 16. Save. We're gonna add all of this here. Going to do added support for became NVChad. Sync. Boop. Boop. And now I can kind of talk about the release process for this too. So the way Shift Systems releases all of their Ansible content is using GitLab CI. So if I have Woodpecker running in my home lab, why am I using GitLab CI? And it's a social aspect thing. So as we grow, we're gonna have like more maintainers. And having a public GitLab instance is going to be better than relying on the server in my basement. Um, I try to be forward thinking about like single points of failure, and I love Gitty, I love Woodpecker CI, but having that on-prem for a team of people around the world is going to be a pain in the butt. And then I'd also be letting people like I've only ever met online into my home network, and it's just easier to use public GitLab. It's easier onboarding too. It's like one less account you have to create. There's more people on GitLab. There's more people on GitHub than GitLab, but GitHub's proprietary and GitLab's at least open core. So that's why we use GitLab. Shift systems, Ansible playbooks. Now we can go through here and here and kind of compare the steps side by side. So we have a pipeline where it runs Kix. Oh, Kix is off right now. Kix is off right now because it was being obnoxious with a certain check. It wasn't like secrets and repos. I think it was not pinning packages, which I hate recommending that as a default practice because people just say always pin your dependencies. So people will always say pin your dependencies, pin your dependencies. You don't want breaks. You want it to be repeatable on different systems. And then they never like pair that advice, which isn't wrong, but then they don't pair that with good security practices, or like, hey, if you are going to do this, you need to develop a mechanism for getting informed and a remediation plan for security issues. Whereas if you do like pulling from stable or latest, you do risk things being inconsistent on different machines, but you have a lower security risk because when people install the application, they're not pulling in vulnerable dependencies. So you can't override signatures. I think it was just I woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day and didn't feel like fixing it. I'll make a note to do that. Then we use Ansible lint. I knew this existed, and I didn't understand why until I started publishing to Galaxy, why you need to use Ansible lint. And that's because Ansible Galaxy is a bit more picky than the default Ansible interpreter. So it's just running Ansible lint dot in a folder. I would recommend doing this because it will make you do less ambiguous things. So using Ansible.builtin instead of just like the module, because there are different behaviors between legacy and legacy and built-in for a lot of modules, and helps you clean up your YAML and makes you write more readable Ansible. And there is a plugin for it for VS Code, so would recommend doing that. And then Galaxy publish, this is just, this is just a shell command. It is a shell command that will just deploy a role, or build a role to Ansible Galaxy and then publish it after using a secret stored inside of GitLab CI. Yeah. The other reason for GitLab CI is that it's public. So I was actually hearing the OpenInfra people talk about this with Zool. They not only open source everything for OpenStack, but their builds and their processes are open too, and I think that's something cool to strive for. So it's not just like this thing gets built and released from black box infrastructure that I have no idea how it works. You can see how the sausage is made. You can even see the parts where I'm getting angry at security tools. The good and the bad, because I'm sure I'm going to get shade for like disabling Kix instead of fixing it right away. So now that we have that new release, how do we consume it? The answer is going to be Woodpecker. So now the way that gets deployed is using the same process we just went over for It's the same process we did for NixOS, where we have a repo in here that is hooked into GitLab CI. So we have the base.yaml file, where essentially all it's doing is importing the base rule. So then the way we would consume this in a pipeline is we go to Woodpecker. I forget the rule name I had for this, base. So if we want to add those NV chad changes to all of our machines, we'd go to run pipeline. Wrong project. We'd go to the right project first. So we'd go to Ansible jobs, run, role name, yeah, base. Forgot if I went for the memes and named it the base role. Then, here we go. So why use CI? This is something I could do a blog and a video over too, is why wouldn't I use a specific Ansible tool? Which is a valid question. Part of it is sometimes you want to do things that Ansible's not necessarily good at first. So building a container, I'm not saying you can't do these things in Ansible, it's just sometimes easier to do. You want access to the secrets manager in your CI tool and a few other cases like that, where you would want to build in, or where you would want to use CI instead of something like Ansible Semaphore or Ansible AWX. Another reason is you already have like CI as a part of your build processes, so you again don't have tools for all. So you might be trading off like some creature comforts and some ease of use for tools for all. So like all the automation is funneled through one tool, which is really nice. And you can use Ansible Semaphore for CI. It's just Woodpecker's way easier for like a continuous integration use case. Another reason would be is you want to be more pure infra as code. So jobs aren't managed through like YAML and config files. They're managed through like configuring an application, whereas everything is configured inside of either this repo or it's a secret. So the only other things besides state is secrets that get pulled in for here. But if you want like ease of use and you have to share this, like you want tier 1 or lower skilled techs to be able to pull or to make their own jobs and stuff, the hassle of having like tool sprawl and stuff is totally worth it. Both are valid strategies. There's not like a right or a wrong way. One nice thing about AWX over Semaphore or running pipelines in CI, or using the drone plugin for Woodpecker, is when you do AWX, it is a nightmare to set up, but you can build execution environments, so you're shaving like minutes off of your build time. Like if I go to redeploying ShiftMon recently, I go from the dependency map. Does it show the start time? Yeah, I spent a good 3 minutes just pulling in dependencies from Galaxy. It's kind of insane. Like, I think I'm gonna spend more time deploying or like adding in dependencies than I am actually deploying the base role, which kind of sucks. But the container for this is like using no resources at all. Like if we go to our Linux dashboard and pop in that server, It's using a gig of RAM-ish. And has super low I/O weight. Like, this is a very nice, this is a very lean, mean resource machine. And if I wanted to run kicks with it too, I'd end up with tool sprawl, where I'd have like Ansible semaphore and Woodpecker CI set up. Or I'd have to like run shell commands in Ansible to do things, which isn't great, and then I have to like keep the stuff I want to run in CI separate from my base roles, and it's just easier to shove it all in a CI pipeline. Now it's going to update all the base packages and do stuff there. So we'll come back to this, and let's talk about black box monitoring. So right now, Shiftmon comes with Uptime Kuma. Shouldn't say comes with. Can be deployed with Uptime Kuma, which is a really nice tool, but there are some issues with it. I talked about this in my self-talk. Oh god, that's cursed. I brought this up in my self-talk, and before I say mean things about Uptime Kuma, I want to make it clear that I think it's an amazing tool, solves a legitimate problem, and if I didn't think it was good, I wouldn't be adding it into Shiftmon. So my opinion of it's pretty high. So Uptime Kuma is really good, but there's no like user management here. I like go into settings. I can set up API keys, but I can't set up users. So that's really annoying. There's also no infrastructure as code interface. So the GUI for Uptime Kuma is amazing, but there's not an official API. All the states managed in a SQLite database that doesn't have an abstraction, either through like an API, or Terraform module, or Ansible. The other option would be synthetic monitoring, but I believe that requires Grafana Cloud, and I think Shiftmon should be able to be run entirely on-prem, because that does have a Terraform module, and I forget if it has a Terraform module, an API, and maybe Ansible, so it can be configured with Infra as code. Final thing that sucks about Uptime Kuma is there's no way to manage multiple probes from a single interface. So the reason why synthetic monitoring is awesome is they give you a bunch of probes that you can use around the world, or you can set them up yourself and do all of that through infrastructure as code. I believe using synthetic monitoring is only supported via Terraform, but I think it'd be really nice if we could have an interface, have a way where you could have like a probe in multiple data centers, creating black box checks for an application. And the other nice thing that I'd like to add is having a consistent experience for data. So I'd like to have an experience where like GTP under, oh, I don't have it sending yet, but like the metrics from Shiftmon, or the metrics for black box monitoring, aren't their own little thing. Yeah. So that's the motivation for wanting to write my own black box monitoring tool, because there's a bunch of them out there, and it feels so stupid to want to write my own. Because there's like, oh great, yet another thing that like pings my website and makes sure it's alive. There are already 50 of those. But as far as I know, there's not an open source tool that has a single interface for monitoring and managing multiple probes. So that's why I'm gonna start the kind of roadmap with it is going to be, I'm going to start making it so that you can do it through Ansible. So you define, these are the SSL certs I want to monitor, these are the websites I want to monitor, these are the DNS, DNS and just a dumb ping. Those are the things I want to monitor. And then you just put it into ShiftMon, it goes through the same alerting pipeline, gets the same data and querying experience that you would get for like seeing how utilized a node is and if the node is healthy, rather than have to deal with like different data sources. So that's the motivation. How are we doing? Let's deploy. Everything. Yeah, everything besides Zeke is happy, which is good. Now, actually, if I exit out, then sh in again, Vim should be a valid alias. Did that not get committed? Whatever. Let's see, telegraph.d. Or just dot files not get called with base? I need to edit my CI pipeline to get that working, but I can do that later. Yep, that's the case. So now... Alright, let's not be animals here. Let's see, copy paste. Alright, so now let's go to commit that. We can deal with that later. So this is what we're working with right now. For data, so the first goal is to get multiple URLs to have data that looks sane. So if I look for Telegraph, yeah, that guy. This is the data we're working with. So it's showing all of the certificates associated, showing those as labels. When it's going to expire, all of that information. So I think the data for this is mostly okay. The thing we want to do next is make it so these loop over each other. This sounds really dumb to have the same input over and over again, but the reason is that each check could have different parameters. So you could have this one website that's publicly accessible with a valid SSL certificate, and then this other one that has like a bearer token or basic auth that has to be performed. Or you can access it, and then you also want to check for certificate validity. Or you want it to fail if it has an invalid cert, so you can alert on it faster. So now what we want to do is, let's minimize this down to a list of one thing. And then do this, this, okay, cool. So we get one set of labels, we get the content length, so we go label, I don't understand why the status code gets a tag, but I can live with it. That actually makes alerting easier, which is why I think they did it. So now content length, and then everything in here is an integer, which is good because Victoria metrics can only ingest strings with their labels. And that's HTTP. And then we get multiple metrics for the certificate. This is something that's really neat that Telegraph does that I haven't seen other tools do, which is it actually grabs the whole certificate chain through the X509 plugin. So this actually goes through and grabs like, hey, this is the Nextcloud, or not Nextcloud, the Let's Encrypt certificate authority, the intermediate CA, and your certificate. This is really handy because late 2020? Gosh, I'm old now. Late 2020, late 2021. The initial intermediate certificate that Let's Encrypt was using, the intermediate certificate expired. And so if you had an outdated Let's Encrypt client, you would be getting valid certificates with an intermediate cert that was about to expire. And most monitoring tools will just see that there's the certificate on the website and just be like, you're Gucci, you're fine, and then ignore the intermediate certs. This, you could use the same alert to monitor both a root, an intermediate, and a leaf CA. And it actually, I think it has the, we need to make sure verification error gets dropped or has a code. I'm not sure how I want to deal with that. Or gets sent to a log. But we can deal with outputs later. So now we want to write an Ansible template that'll generate this as a for loop for us. And I think we want to do separate outputs. So what we're going to do is cat telegraph conf so we're going to copy these, and then for now I'm going to leave it in the template. I'll eventually move it into the main config. I am not sure of the negative impact of having multiple outputs, like how much memory that takes up on the agent and stuff. I would have to do like A/B testing. So this would be HTTP X509 oh hey, X509, so it's already a log. So I think let's look at why X509 cert is being treated as a... Ah, damn it. Let's do this again, now with root privileges. So this is already getting routed a certain way, but I need to make sure. Let me rewind. I just kind of like spewed my brain all over. So inside of this name pass, where is it? This guy. HTTP response is already being input, or already being routed, but I need to figure out if that's correct, because there's some stuff. HTTP response All the text looks like it's going into the labels already. So that's whatever. So HTTP response is correct. X509 cert, it looks like I'm lazily routing to logs, but I don't know if that's a good thing or not. And serial number, algorithm, source, type leaf, valid, and then age, estimate, start date, verification code. Okay, so this is actually sorted to work for our use case. And I think it's okay to do X509 in the other spot. So let's get to actually coding on Shiftmon now. We're only like 50 minutes in. We're not going to spend too much time here, but yeah. So that's the goal for getting black box monitoring set up. Let's do a git pull. Everything should be up to date now. So now we need to add in, we're gonna just be in the Telegraph world today. We're gonna make a new template, blackbox.conf. Then we're going to put in I'm gonna cap this out. Here, boop. URL. URL. Okay, cool. So now we're going to do an input here and here. So now we need to do a for loop. It's going to be for one. This is hard. For URL in Telegraph URLs. Black box URLs. I think I want to do SSL or TLS black box URLs. Then we want to do an end4. And we want to change the configuration file to route this differently, which telegraph.conf. So we want X509 cert. We actually want that inside of metrics. It's kind of high cardinality, but I don't think it's unbearable. And usually for the amount of URLs in an org, you can deal with that. And even if it's high cardinality, the churn shouldn't be too high on it. Cardinality is the measurement of unique series, and a series is a unique set of tags attached to a measurement. So each time like the certificate rolls, even if it has the same common name, it would have a different serial number, therefore create a new series. But that's usually like a 60-day or longer task. So churn would be just how fast you're using time, like changing time series. So like Kubernetes is a good example of super high churn, where if you have like a lot of cron jobs or a lot of ephemeral workloads inside of a Kubernetes cluster, you have high churn because those deployments are going to have unique names from other deployments or have containers that spin up and down within them, generating a bunch of unique time series. So yeah. So name pass, HTTP response, we are going to put x509 underscore certificate. That there. Let me double check, and then inventory. Yeah, that has secrets in it. Poop. That has secrets in it like right away, and I don't feel like changing a bind password, so give me 1 second. Inventory. Black box. YAML. And then black box dot YAML. So let's see, what else do I need to get rid of? Okay, cool. And show this on stream now. If not, is it really a shift system stream if I don't leak secrets on stream and I have to like rekey right after or during? Okay. So now Zoe is going to have variables. So now we're going to have, what did I call this variable? TLS black box URLs, and then we want this to be a list. So let's do Irvin local shiftsystems.net. Let's do HTTPS google.com. That's had a bunch of stuff in it, so that's a good monitoring candidate. And then let's monitor the hub. I don't think you get, oh, fine. Then I forget if GitHub redirects or not. Nope, it does not. Cool. So those are our black box URLs. I have the Telegraph secret further down in the inventory for testing. Now I need to add an Ansible task. So now, sorry, I'm thinking about all the parameters I have to put into this. Name, Ansible, or add black box template. Ansible built-in .template. Source is going to be blackbox.conf. Dest Etsy telegraph.d blackbox.conf become true when God, I need to split this so I remember what I called that variable. Copy. I am not going to validate for people putting empty lists for things that should have a list in them. Hot take. So eventually I'll add in support for things like basic auth and do a dictionary and all that good stuff, but for now it's just going to be a dumb data structure. Is defined. Then I need to set mode. Yeah, this was a bug that somebody caught, is that Telegraph had permissions that were too loose, so now it's just, it was world readable, because that was the Ansible default, which is bad because you could, without admin or with low levels of privilege, figure out like what a machine was doing. Because there are some things, like I think the vSphere scraper, that you would be able to gather information essentially without having to find that URL yourself. You can figure out that vSphere lives here on the network. So yeah, now Telegraph is the only person that can see or read this or root. Here. So the reason why vSphere would be bad would be that you could compromise like a probe. So you could figure out that this company, if you compromise like a Telegraph probe, you could figure out that a company is running vSphere because they have a config for monitoring vSphere. And you would also get the URL for that. You would also know that like the metrics API is turned on. So it's mostly an OPSEC thing because secrets are kept in Etsy default Telegraph. So where was I? I'm super squirrely today. So now we should be able to add in this black box template and do Ansible playbook L shiftsystems.net s. And then I'm just going to start it at this task so I can fail quickly. Something really good lesson from my one of my engineering professors in college was he was yelling at us for not failing fast enough. So when you do projects, you're going to fail, and you are going to fail a lot. And as long as you're learning from your failures and failing differently, like you're not repeating mistakes, that's okay. But not failing regularly is bad because you're not getting feedback about like, are you heading in the right direction? Am I doing kind of the right thing? Or if you have a very ambitious project, like aggregating multiple sources of renewable energy together, thought that a bunch of 21-year-olds could figure that out when they had a full course load in a year. Yeah. So realizing that like, hey, this is a really big problem, and so are these other two things, and you can narrow the scope way faster if you start researching and you start failing quickly rather than like sitting in front of a whiteboard for too long. I'm guessing this isn't going to match, and that's okay. Yep. So we are going to change this over to Irvin. Okay, not type that right. Oh, I didn't specify an inventory. And I want to use black box. That one's somewhat sanitized. What? The hell? Okay, I've saved this. I'm in the shift RMM. Telegraph YAML. there even a telegraph? Yeah, there is a telegraph.yaml. That's a real file. It's not a surveillance drone. I think we just have to go through the whole thing, which is kind of dumb, but whatever. This roll doesn't take that long to run anyway. It's super weird that that's... Local... Oh crap, and I put those under Zoe too. Let's cut those. Clean that up. Did I not spell my own company name right again? Oh, that might be why. Alright, let's try to start a task with that too, because I think Ansible just might have been drunk because I couldn't find an inventory. Alright. We're just gonna deal with this then. So this is where I regret only doing add. How did I remove that key? So now this should work. Wonder or when. I'm just gonna deal with my old SSH key being on there. Alright, here's the time where I print out keys on stream, but it's actually not the private key this time. Actually kind of surprised. Oh wait, no, I didn't put that in free IPA. Historia. I forgot I gave my dog's usernames. That's supposed to be for a demo for that practicing safe sec talk, but that one might get added later. I love having SSH keys that are encrypted via I love having SSH keys that are encrypted via my YubiKey. The downside is that some services or some use cases do not play friendly with that. Like running Ansible on the freaking command line. I'll test that one offline. I think I'm about at time for how long I was supposed to stream today. And I need to run a couple of errands before some stores close, so I'm gonna run through what's been going on in shifts with Shiftmon for the last little bit and call it a day. So the first thing I want to get to is we are pulling apart logs so much better now for certain services. So before, I think this merged like about a week ago. Grafana now can use the log format parser, and it mostly works. Oh yes, it didn't have goofy characters. So now we can see the access log of Grafana, and I think Loki? And I actually found a bug in Grafana with this one, so that was kind of cool that I found like a bug in a big piece of software that people use. Um, log format doesn't pull apart this very well yet because the queries kind of look like log format and it makes the parser hiccup. But for the most part now we can get messages that are parsed correctly inside of Loki, which is really nice. I think I added it for Grafana, Loki. I'm working on it for Treefic. Um, so if you have a access log set up as JSON and forward it to standard out, now we can parse that into a sane log. What was happening before use Grafana because I was all green and happy. If we go back like a week, we go back to here because I did it on a week. What was happening was the message. Where is it? Yeah, so we would have this message field that inside of it would have log formatted data. So what's happening is there's a tricky little pipeline inside of Telegraph that will say, hey, for these applications, they're using JSON or log format, and then pull them apart and then override the message field to either say none or replace it with the field named MSG. And the bug in Grafana was that certain log format fields, let's see if I can find it, certain log format fields were just empty instead of like an empty string, kind of like a null versus zero difference, and the log format parser didn't like that. So even if you did pull them apart as log format, Telegraph would get kind of tripped up on that. And it's a bug filed on the Grafana GitHub now. So let's go through code. That's been the biggest change in like the last couple weeks is starting to use syslog more and starting to get a better log pipeline so that you can just use syslog. You don't have to have a bunch of disks sitting there filling up with the Treefic access log and having to rotate that out. And it actually comes through pretty now, and so it's more consumable and more useful to users. Added syslog parsing. Extending the service timeout. So I think I'm the only one that uses this feature right now, but Grafana on-call can get set up, and it's really weird because it was an acquisition, but on-call's written in Django instead of Go, and the Django app can take a while to initialize and has a different initialization process than Go binary started, serve web app, get bacon. It has like a separate container for initializing Django, which kind of stinks. So that needed an extended service timeout for Podman so that the container would have more time to spin up and not lead to failures, because I was having issues where like I'd have all the containers for on-call kind of hanging around after shutdown and stuff. So that's better now. It still needs some love, but can definitely be better now. Syslog will now configure journal forwarding by default. So there is a variable. That says journal forwarding. That's a default to true. So if you don't want to forward the journal to syslog, you don't have to. But now forwarding the systemd journal to syslog will happen, so you can get that data as well. I got angry at Kix. I gave a talk about scanning for secrets and single sign-on, and it cursed me to have a bunch of bugs with scanning for secrets in code and single sign-on. So that was fun. Reverse lookups are optional. So this one is because we wanted to have This one is because I was getting a bunch of logs for reverse lookups failing, and it's not entirely useful information. You could have internal applications, but now everything should default to having reverse lookups, but if you set any one of these variables for a given service, it will default them to false. Bug fixes, I noticed that there were some log systems that were ingesting Telegraph data, and to make the role more friendly with that, Telegraph now runs in quiet, so no news is good news, basically. It doesn't have like all that metric reporting and stuff built in, because that's usually not very useful information. So it's not spewing a bunch of meaningless crap to logs now. Oh god, this bug. This bug was such a pain in my butt. So this was a fun bug because I was having issues with getting certificates for my internal domain, which is .local.shiftsystems.net, which internally is resolved by AdGuard and FreeIPA. And so when I would run the Let's Encrypt DNS verification, it would reach out and look for the DNS record in .local.shiftsystems.net, which is FreeIPA, not inside of Cloudflare, my DNS provider. So now the resolvers for the DNS check will be public resolvers all the time. And if you do have a bug with this, I can bar this out pretty quickly, but I figured this is the desired behavior for most people. I am not aware of anybody that has what would that require? In order to hit that, you would need a DNS resolver or a private Let's Encrypt. Yeah, a private Acme server that also supported DNS verification, which let me know if you use Shiftmon and have that, because I want to talk to you. That just sounds like a super cool use case. This one. Green pull. Oh, dashboard bug fixes. There's a spelling error in the Proxmox dashboard that got fixed yesterday. And then here's the code for parsing. The pipeline got way more efficient now. Now we're filtering out these apps as JSON logs and then cleaning them up so that the message field doesn't exist and ruin your data. We added this one a while back so that way people can configure roles outside of OAuth. This will eventually be made optional once we figure out how to do the role mapping with an OIDC provider. What else? Oh, GPG keys are fixed now, and VirtIOFS is being ignored as well, so some creature comforts. One of the nice things about using Shiftmon is that there are just some weird edge cases that the Shiftmon user base picks up, so that they run into it, they encode that knowledge into Shiftmon, and you just run the Ansible role and get it for free. And then the last one I think I'll leave off on is the last one I want to leave off on is optimization. So we've optimized both how our alert data is stored and the SQLite database. So alerts are now stored inside of Loki as a data store, because that should be in every Shiftmon install. And that's more efficient because because you can have arbitrary labels, and SQL doesn't handle storing arbitrary labels very well. Loki will do a much better job of that. So putting the alert data there is a much more fitting place. I've also added a Redis cache to Grafana and some optimizations around the SQLite database, so that way it works in more scalable environments. Found some bugs in a decent sized deployment that probably should have been using a relational database, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not looking into how does Grafana store data sooner. Um, but this is kind of like making the best of the suboptimal situation, where now we don't have to like have people migrating from SQLite to Postgres or something like that, and have to migrate all their dashboards and deal with that nightmare. And got bored one night and ran a Zap scan and changed a cookie setting. So yeah, it's everything that I've been up to in like the last month. It hasn't been a bunch of like big flashy stuff, which kind of sucks, but it's all been, the product is still gradually getting better. There's kind of like a good core that's just getting improved upon now for a while. Hopefully now, though, it should be getting exciting with black box monitoring. So yeah, it's been fun streaming with y'all. Have a good night.